Tonight, I'm going to tell you 3 creepy stories. 3 completely different situations, but each one has a moment where everything suddenly becomes much more disturbing than it first appeared. And trust me, the 3rd story is the one you'll want to say until the end. For at first, Ethan thought someone was messing with him. Every morning for 3 days, there was something waiting outside his front door. The first morning, it was a red marble. The second morning, it was an old silver key. And on the 3rd morning, it was a photograph. None of them had a note attached. None of them had an obvious explanation. But the photograph was different, because Ethan recognized the room in it. It was his bedroom, and the photograph had been taken from inside the house. Ethan immediately ran upstairs. His bedroom looked exactly as it always did. Nothing seemed missing. Nothing appeared disturbed. But then he noticed something that made his stomach drop. The photograph had been taken from the corner of the room where there was no window. Someone had been standing inside his bedroom, and Ethan had no idea when. He showed the photograph to his mother. She stared at it for several seconds before simply saying, "I don't know what this is." But Ethan noticed something strange about her reaction. She wasn't confused. She looked scared. That afternoon, Ethan asked his best friend Marcus if he knew anything about the objects. Marcus laughed at first. He thought it was probably some stupid prank from someone at school. And honestly, Ethan hoped he was right. So the two of them started looking for an explanation. The red marble was easy enough. There was nothing special about it. The key was harder. They discovered it was an old-fashioned house key, but it didn't match any lock in Ethan's house. Then there was the photograph. Marcus looked closely at it and noticed something Ethan hadn't. On the desk behind Ethan's bed was a small wooden box. Ethan had never seen it before, but Marcus recognized it. His grandfather had owned one exactly like it. That night, Ethan went through some old family photographs. He was looking for anything that might explain the box. Instead, he found something else. A photograph of his mother when she was a teenager. Standing beside her was a young man Ethan had never seen before, and in his hand was the exact same wooden box. Ethan took the photograph downstairs. His mother saw it, and this time she couldn't hide her reaction. She sat down. For a few seconds she said nothing. Then she finally told him the truth. The young man in the photograph was Ethan's older brother, a brother Ethan had never been told about. He had died when he was very young. At least that was what Ethan had always been told. But his mother explained that the family had never talked about him because the circumstances surrounding his disappearance had been painful and complicated. Ethan immediately asked the question that had been bothering him. Then why are these things showing up now? His mother didn't know, or at least she claimed she didn't. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. Around 2 a.m., he heard something outside. He went downstairs and looked through the window. Nothing. Then he noticed something on the porch. Another object. The wooden box. The same one from the old photograph. Ethan opened the front door. There was nobody there. He picked up the box and brought it inside. It was locked, but the old silver key from the previous morning fit perfectly. Inside was a small stack of photographs and one handwritten note. Ethan read it. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a warning. It simply said, "Ask your mother why she stopped looking." Ethan immediately confronted her. For the first time, she admitted something she'd kept hidden for decades. His brother hadn't simply disappeared. After he went missing, someone had claimed to know where he was, but his mother had been told to stop searching. She had eventually accepted that she would never find him. Ethan asked who had told her that. She wouldn't answer. Then came the strangest part. The next morning, Ethan found one final object outside, a photograph. This time, it showed his brother as an adult, standing in front of a building, alive. Ethan stared at the picture. There was a date written on the back. It was from only 6 months earlier. He turned to his mother. She looked at the photograph and whispered something Ethan had never expected to hear. "He came back once." Ethan froze. "Who?" His mother looked toward the front door. Then she said, "Your brother." She explained that someone had contacted her 6 months earlier. He claimed to be her son, but she had refused to meet him. She was afraid that whoever contacted he was trying to reopen a chapter she had spent years trying to bury. Ethan asked the question that mattered most. Was it really him? His mother didn't know, and neither did Ethan. But then he noticed something in the photograph. In the reflection of the building's glass door, there was another person standing behind his brother, someone Ethan recognized. It was his mother's brother, the same uncle who had always insisted that Ethan's brother was gone forever. Ethan looked at his mother. She slowly covered her mouth, because she had just realized something too. The person leaving the objects outside their house hadn't been trying to scare Ethan. They had been trying to make him investigate. And the final photograph had just revealed that the person who knew the truth might have been hiding it from the family all along. But there was still one question Ethan couldn't answer. If his brother really was alive, why had he chosen to communicate through objects instead of simply coming home? She was driving home late one night when she noticed someone standing beside an abandoned building, a person in a dark jacket. They weren't waving, they weren't moving, they were just standing there, watching the road. She drove past and forgot about it, until 5 minutes later, she saw the same person again, different stretch of road, same jacket, same posture, and this time they were looking directly at her. She kept driving. When she finally got home, she told her brother what happened. He laughed it off and suggested maybe she'd seen two people wearing similar clothes. But the next morning, she checked the route on her phone. The two locations were far apart. There was no way someone could have walked from the first location to the second in 5 minutes. So she went back during daylight. The building where she'd first seen the person had been abandoned for years. While searching online, she found an old local report about the property. It mentioned that years earlier, someone had repeatedly been seen standing outside the building late at night. The description caught her attention. Dark jacket. She thought she'd found the explanation. Someone was simply recreating an old story to frighten people. But then she noticed something that made her stomach drop. The person she'd seen wasn't standing outside the building in the same place as the person described in the report. They had been standing across the road. She returned that evening with her brother. They waited near the building. Nothing happened. No mysterious person. No movement. They were about to leave when her brother noticed something near their car. A small camera. Someone had attached it where it could clearly see the road. They called the police. The camera had been recording for several nights, and when investigators checked the footage, they discovered that the mysterious person wasn't appearing randomly. Someone was deliberately positioning them along the road. But there was one final detail. The footage showed the person approaching her car on the night she'd seen them, and then disappearing from view. The investigators checked every angle. There was no footage of the person leaving. Then they noticed something else. The camera had captured her car arriving, but it had also captured something reflected in her rear window. A second figure, someone sitting inside her car. She had spent the entire night wondering how that stranger kept appearing ahead of her. She never realized the stranger wasn't the person following her. Someone else had been following her the entire time. The first thing people noticed about Daniel was that he never opened his curtains. Not in the morning, not in the afternoon, not even on the brightest summer days. He lived alone in a small apartment at the end of a quiet street, and as far as his neighbors knew, he kept almost entirely to himself. He didn't cause problems. He didn't play loud music. He rarely had visitors. He simply came home from work every evening, closed the door behind him, and disappeared. Most people assumed he was just a private person. Until one evening, his neighbor Emily noticed something strange. Daniel had left his apartment door slightly open. That was unusual enough, but what really caught her attention was the hallway light. It was switched on inside his apartment, even though Daniel always seemed to keep his place dark. Emily knocked. No answer. She knocked again. Still nothing. She eventually walked away. The next morning, Daniel was at work as usual, so Emily forgot about it, until the same thing happened 3 nights later. The door was open again. This time, Emily could hear something coming from inside, a faint tapping sound. Tap, tap, tap. Then silence. She didn't investigate. Instead, she mentioned it to another neighbor who laughed and said Daniel had always been strange. But over the next week, several people began noticing little things. Daniel would sometimes stand outside his apartment late at night, staring toward the end of the street. He never seemed to be looking at a person. He looked like he was waiting for something. Then, one Friday evening, Emily saw him carrying a large cardboard box into his apartment. Nothing unusual about that. Except that when he walked past her, she noticed the box was covered in old photographs, and one of those photographs had fallen onto the floor. Emily picked it up. It showed Daniel standing beside a group of people, but there was something strange about the picture. Everyone was smiling, except Daniel, and behind them was the exact same apartment building they were standing in now. Emily turned the photograph over. There was a date written on the back, 23 years earlier. She asked Daniel about it the next day. For the first time, he looked genuinely frightened. He simply said, "Where did you find that?" Emily told him. Daniel took the photograph from her and immediately went inside. The door closed. That night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about it. So the following morning, she searched the building's history online. What she discovered made her stomach drop. 23 years earlier, there had been a fire in the building. Several residents had been forced to evacuate, but one person had never been found, a young boy named Daniel. Emily stared at the screen. The missing boy had the same name and the same birthday. She immediately went to Daniel's apartment. There was no answer. She knocked harder. Nothing. Then she noticed something underneath his door, a photograph. She picked it up. It was the same group from the old picture, but this time someone had circled one person in red. It wasn't Daniel. It was a woman standing behind him. On the back were 4 words. "She knows what happened." Emily looked toward the apartment. For the first time, she understood why Daniel had never opened his curtains. He wasn't hiding from the neighbors. He had been watching the street, waiting for someone to come back. And according to the photograph, that person had finally returned.